Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my friends, wherever you might be. By the end of this video, you'll have all the info and highlights you need to run Chapter 1 of Spoken on the Songwind, Smoother Than a Mirrored Shield. This book opens shortly after the heroes put an end to the insect infestation at the Magambia and saved 3 new Anadi who had come under attack by some griffins. Janatimo has just arrived at the Magambia after an extended absence, and he invites the heroes to his office to discuss their recent challenges. Janatimo is going to be a major NPC and primary quest giver throughout Book 2. He's also the headmaster of the Uzanjati branch, so some of your Uzanjati PCs may have a chance to get early notice of his arrival and hear their classmates fanboying a bit. He is motivated to keep the Magambia and its students safe by uncovering threats and teaching students to be self-sufficient in the face of adversity. In trying to learn what caused the recent strife at the Magambia, he sees the PCs as perfect for this job. They've shown themselves to be capable problem solvers, but as students, they can draw less attention and political complication in their actions. The first encounter with Janatimo is run using victory points, where players are earning impression points based on how they explain their theories to a series of questions posed by the headmaster. Now, like most victory point systems, be clear with your players what the roles they are making represent. In this case, Janatimo is not simply looking for a single sentence answer. He wants evidence, rationale, to understand what the student's thought process is. Have the PCs summarize their theories, and then describe the skill check that they are making, representing how much detail or supporting evidence their character can provide with the knowledge or skill that they're rolling for. If you'd rather have the players answer completely in character, that's fine. I'd just recommend ditching the skill checks entirely and granting influence points for any strong answers that the players come up with. It's really frustrating coming up with what everyone agrees at the table is a creative idea, only to roll poorly and to have to justify why your answer didn't go well within the fiction. After the encounter, Janatimo offers the 2 main quests of Chapter 1. Learn more about the Anadi students, which is going to lead into the Hababe Building dungeon crawl, and find where the griffins who attacked the students came from, which leads to the Animal Lot dungeon crawl. I'm going to start with investigating the griffins and would encourage you and Janatimo to ask the party to do the same. Even though it appears second in Chapter 1, that section says that Oba hasn't tended to her animals since the attack, so waiting weeks or months to follow up on that particular lead may make for some pretty hungry animals. The PCs start with some gather information checks to identify Oba's menagerie as the source of the griffins, and once they arrive, they complete a brief interview with Oba herself. They have the opportunity to make some skill checks to improve Oba's attitude, but that won't change too much with this interaction. The outcome of the conversation really should be guiding the players towards investigating the animal cages for any clues. The main secret Oba is keeping here is that she knows about frog legs, but you're discouraged from revealing that point quite yet. Instead, play up her skepticism of the Magambia and the PCs as students, and let them draw their own conclusions, that she knows more than she's leading on, with some long strategic pauses or refusals to answer. The Animal Lot at Oba's is a dungeon crawl, with a unique feature that, unlike most dungeons, there are no walls between the rooms and encounters, since it takes place in an entirely open lot. Now, because of this, and especially if you're not running on a virtual tabletop, you may want to give an overview of each notable cage when the heroes first enter. While the players are likely going to be searching area by area, their characters would have a full view of the surroundings, and it could be disorienting to them if you start to describe a cage or a building the players didn't realize was there. As soon as the players enter, also be aware that the 2 tigers listed in Area B2 are actually meant to be roaming around the lot, looking for a meal. Spring their attack as soon as it makes sense once the PCs start describing their exploration activities. It's one less thing for you to remember, and it brings Oba to the lot to meet the PCs to fill several important roles. She'll provide them with cage keys they'll need to investigate the area more easily. She provides them with the optional goal of rescuing the animals non-lethally. And finally, you can also use her to provide some hints on how to handle some of the trickier beasts if the characters don't opt to use recall knowledge checks. The Basilisk and the Mapeshi are the highlight encounters here. Try to call attention to the mirror shield mentioned in the provision shed before the players encounter the Basilisk, perhaps mentioning a bright reflective glint through a crack in the flimsy shed wall. This is going to add another layer of strategy and reinforces the dangers of petrification. The Mapeshi's thunderous fall reaction gives a lot of fun combination possibilities as well. In addition to having it charge into the air and fall, by fighting in the tree line, you can also have it leap among the trees when the heroes first encounter it, giving another opportunity to use this very cool reaction. This section wraps up with the PCs discussing what they found with Oba. The key leaving this portion is for the players to get the sense that a group of bullies or enforcers is moving in, which will help connect them to future investigations involving shakedowns and organized crime that Froglegs represents. You can communicate this through a combination of the found Gripply lockpicks, the intentional destruction of locks and cages by a humanoid group, and as Oba's distrust melts away, having it be replaced by clear fear that she's in danger. The players can't leave with too many answers, however. To maintain the pacing of the book, the reveal of Froglegs as one of the main villains can't occur quite yet. Revealing too early will signal the players that their next focus should be on tracking her down instead of continuing their studies, making managing the tasks in Chapter 2 more difficult. The Hababe Building is the other dungeon crawl in Chapter 1. It begins with locating and questioning the Anadi students, gathering information on why they came to the Magambia. The Anadi let the players know that they've been drawn into the storeroom by some sort of mysterious force, and they would appreciate if the heroes can help them investigate it. As they begin, an animated terracotta soldier comes to life, and a bonus Heed Anadi advice action is provided in the chapter for this encounter. When using these types of additional actions available to the players, make sure that you're sharing the full text of the ability and explaining the mechanics out of character so that the players can make an informed decision on when to use it. I know it can be tempting to explain it in-world, but since every other action on their character sheet explains what it does mechanically, this action should be no different. The Hababe Building is another dungeon crawl with some tricky issues to be aware of. The secret door in A2 leading to A5, in my opinion, spoils a lot of the tension and mystery in this section. A party who finds it will likely continue moving forward instead of backtracking, meaning that A3 may come as actually one of the last rooms the party explores, and it makes the party even more skeptical of these students who are hanging out gambling in a place with multiple dead bodies and ringing sounds of combat. If you're aware of why this secret passage is necessary for the narrative, maybe you can let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'd suggest removing that secret door entirely and having the PCs proceed through the building A2 through A7 in order. Even without the secret passage, managing the interaction between the party and the coil spies in area A3 is tough. The encounter as presented has the spies launching into a series of monologues, establishing their cover story that the PCs are expected to interrupt with skill checks. In practice, I found that the PCs are likely to start asking detailed questions way before the spies can even start their stories, making it difficult to naturally go back to the flow of conversation as written. My suggestion is to seed some of this information from the written cover stories immediately upon entering the room, and then throughout the conversation out of character, such as letting the players know that none of them can recall seeing these two in class, or that this doesn't seem like a particularly good place to study for them as they glance around the room. That provides a good prompt for the PCs to ask about a particular topic, allow you to read the cover story, and then allow them to make a skill check to disbelieve. The rest of the dungeon is pretty straightforward, especially if you remove the secret door in A2. The wood golem in A4 can be a little confusing to run, and Paizo actually removed the golem anti-magic rules in the remastered version of Pathfinder 2, given how complex that mechanic was. If you want to use the legacy full rules, your TLDR is that the wood golem is immune to all spells other than those with the fire trait. Spells with the fire trait, instead of the usual effect, deal damage based on whether it's a direct or an area spell. That means that anything from the ignition cantrip to a fireball to cauterize wounds cast on the wood golem will just deal that fixed amount of damage and nothing else. If you don't want to deal with all that, just give the golem weakness 5 to fire, ignore the golem anti-magic ability, and move on. The interrogation in A3 and the items found in A7 are the key clues players should take away from this series of encounters. Once they discover these, they can go back to Janatimo to debrief, and you can reiterate his request for them to focus on their studies and await further instruction. A few weeks after this, Janatimo will contact them again, promoting them to conversants and starting the series of tasks in Chapter 2. But that brings us to the end of this chapter. Leaving this chapter, the PCs should have knowledge of an increase in organized crime and threats in Antambu, a serpent folk presence at the Magambia, and that some type of research is happening with insects. If any of this is unclear, make sure you're emphasizing through other student observations, vignettes in class, or other types of clues. Importantly though, the PCs shouldn't have direct leads to follow up with any of this information until some time has passed and Janatimo has promoted them to conversants. If you haven't already, check out my video on an overview of Book 2 for options and ideas on how to run these mysteries throughout the module. Otherwise, next time we'll dig into the details of the series of tasks in Chapter 2, which flesh out some of these mysteries and give the players some more direct leads to follow. Until then, thanks, and take care.